Well, welcome, Jamie. I'm so glad you can be with us today. I invited Jamie today, as I've described to the rest of you before, to talk about the Early Childhood Business Collaborative that she coordinates in Addison County. And she's going to tell you all the details about it. And really, it gets at the heart of the facilities and programs model that we're spending so much time just thinking about and wrestling with possible solutions together. I want to say put one quick plug in for another thing that supports facilities and program models, and that is the most recent announcement of another Make Way for Kids grant opportunity. And that is just an opportunity to expand the capacity for infants and toddlers. I'm happy to share a link and some info with Andra so that it can be sent out with minutes later, but I don't want to take any more of Jamie's time. And I'm just going to Jamie, I think you can best explain how the Addison County Early Childhood Business Collaborative was sort of born and continues to evolve, and how it actually does address program models and sustainability.
Thanks, Brenda. Yeah, so let me introduce myself first. So I'm Jamie Stewart. I am the coordinator for the Early Childhood Business Collaborative of Addison County. So that is the name that we landed on. It was formerly just Shared Services of Addison County. And we wanted a name to reflect a little more what we focus on. So it came about through Let's Grow Kids with this grant funding. The idea of shared services, and I work for the hub agency, the counseling service of Addison County. So I do other things besides just coordinate this role. It really fell in line with the mission of CSAC, supporting, the community and early childhood. So we're a mental health agency. We know early intervention is important. So it all kind of aligned with our mission. So I think Luann approached us first from Let's Grow Kids about being the hub agency before identifying the members of the network. Right now we have 6, and we started with 6, and we're kind of in this transition phase where we're trying to recruit new members and kind of expand the services that we provide. So we started with really simple things. We asked the community what they wanted. There was some negotiating, but we ended up on HR, IT, maintenance, and professional development coordination. And the professional development piece was really important to our network. Let's Grow Kids wasn't interested in that initially, but once the argument was made and it was kind of demonstrated how supportive it could be, it really became a big piece of what I do. So that's where we started. HR is ongoing. All of our members use frequently the HR director here at CSAC. We do charge for hourly rates for services that go beyond a general training or an email back and forth. If they really want to do consulting, then there's an hourly rate for that. The IT piece, we've gone back and forth around. Everybody had a needs assessment to kind of get an idea of what they needed. A lot of them didn't know. They all were using kind of pieced together parent support, or they had this man who was a retired IT guy, and he was doing volunteer work for a bunch of places around town, but he actually is looking to officially retire, so that's going away. And we've gone and we've had different companies share information about the products they offer, and we're still kind of fleshing that out at the moment. A big factor in that is the cost. Going from no IT support and no cost to paying for something has been kind of a big hindrance here. So that piece is in the works, I would say. Then the maintenance supports, everybody said they wanted a handyman and they had all these projects to do. And so we were in the beginning moving forward with that. And we did do a site assessment evaluation for everybody. So we have a list of like, these are the things you'll need to fix. Here's a timeline of maintenance and all of that. But COVID kind of put all of that work on hold. People weren't really comfortable with having contractors come in, and now you can't hire a contractor. And so that piece is temporarily on hold with the idea that we'll move forward in terms of helping coordinate the contractors or getting, you know, discounts on like if everybody needs fencing, for example. And then just generally we started like what other discounts could we get for the group? And so we have things like gym memberships for all employees and their spouses, heating oil discounts. We went into payroll services with pay data, and then we have a employee assistance program discount for everybody as well. And that was the beginning, right? That was what everybody wanted us to focus on. And then as time has passed, we've kind of evolved a little bit as well. And so I have gone into the role of researching the topics and then identifying someone who's an expert who can come and share information with the group. And that's time a lot of the directors just don't have at this point. And some of those, in addition to the IT and the other stuff I mentioned, they were looking into retirement options for employee retention. And so we had a broker come and speak with the group. And now, what we're focusing on is it's shifted a little bit more from those things into business supports. So everybody attended a business training that was hosted through Let's Grow Kids. And we're focusing on things like a shared wait list, a shared substitute. We're fleshing out the idea of a shared administrator for things like licensing and you know, the subsidies and the list of things they all need to focus on that they don't have time for. And then the other big piece is that we initiated and got grant funding for the first year of ProCare, which is a child care management software for everybody in the group. And so I helped them all get set up and then kind of ongoing support as they need. A lot of what we're focusing on now is really the business end and staff and employee retention. Those are really big topics this year. And we're trying to find a way to balance, you know, moving forward with those ideas in a way that supports all of them. So that's kind of a general overview. I could go into specifics about, you know, rates and things, but I'm not sure that's necessary here. Do you guys have specific questions you'd like me to answer or, you know, things to discuss or share?
Jamie, maybe you said this and I missed it, but what, and I know like asking when you started is a little funky because it's like evolved over time as it should, but how would you answer that question? When did you start?
So I want to say the initial conversations were like 7 years ago or something at this point, but we are technically in grant year 3 of the actual group together. So I don't know, 3+, I guess.
So Jimmy, you said you do other work. So this is a county position? Is that what this is, or how does this?
No, so this role, the coordinator position is through the grant funding. So I spent a portion of my hours focusing on that. And mostly that's because we didn't have a need for a full-time coordinator. So CSAC has used me partly for that, and then also partly for, I'm the intake coordinator for mental health for youth and family. So I do kind of a whole bunch of other things here within the agency that's not related to this grant funding.
There's also a question, Amy Brooks would like to know a bit about the cost for programs that engage and how you arrived at that. I was wondering too, if you could just speak at how you, like how membership makes decisions, and also, you know, sort of like what are the, Oh my gosh, I just came back from 2 weeks of vacation. I feel like I have such vacay brain. I'm like, and the thought. But yeah, so I'm thinking about, like, the agreements that you come up with, like what is your structure? And are there different tiers available to folks? I know there are, so I should have said at the top, for those of you who haven't been part of these conversations, yeah, exactly what I meant, governance and decision making. Thank you. um, Before I introduced Jamie, I should have said, this is one of the models, one of the programs around the state that has been stood up with a sort of similar model, and each one is funded in its own way. And some of them were seeded through Let's Go Kids, but not all of them. But the goal is that they will all be self-sustaining, because we're going away in 2025. So, if you can speak to some of those pieces, that'd be really great. Thanks.
Yeah, so let's talk about the funding first. So the first 4 years, we have a grant to cover a lot of the costs. So essentially the startup phase, I would say. We've used some of that money to pay for the site assessments or the IT assessments, ProCare, things like that. But the bulk of it is for my time. So as we develop these systems, more of my time is needed. And the idea is, once they're in place, I could cut back and then the cost would be reduced. So we do have some grant funding for the first 4 years. And then right now, every member pays a membership fee of $500. So we have kind of tiered membership. And so as we're recruiting, that will be kind of how we move forward with recruiting new members. So everyone, all 6 of them, are at our top tier. They participate in the monthly meetings we have. They kind of steer the topics that we look into. So they're really the driver of the program and which direction it goes into. So the second level, the second tier would be, I think the membership fee is $250 a year, and they're expected to participate a little less. So they would come quarterly to a meeting. They wouldn't necessarily have say in the steering committee decisions the same way, but they would have a voice. So if there was a decision about something major, they would all get input. And then the final tier would be really what we think of geared towards home providers, in that it's $100 a year and they get access to all of the services at a reduced rate, but they don't need to commit as much time to participating in the network meetings, and maybe they don't have as much of a voice in deciding the decision. And so we came up with a membership agreement that everybody has to sign annually. And it outlines all of that. So it outlines how the decisions are made. It outlines, what a member is entitled to, what their expectations are of us as the hub organization, and then kind of how voting is done. Typically, we discuss things at the monthly meetings if there is a decision to be made, and everybody gets input, and then we decide based on who says yes and who says no. I have yet to kind of encounter anything in which everybody was like, no, I don't want that. So typically everybody's like, this is a great idea, let's move forward with it. Or it's been a couple of them would like to try it and the others aren't sure. So we'll move forward with those couple, and then demonstrate to the group the value. And so that's how we've kind of gotten on with things like the shared wait list and the shared substitute and ProCare, for example. And after it's kind of visualized, everybody's like, oh, okay, I see how this is valuable to my business as well. Does that answer kind of all of the questions?
There's another question that was popped in. Is it a mix of programs? Whoops, and somebody just wrote something. Okay. Anyway, is it a mix of program types, both nonprofit and for-profit, et cetera?
So we actually only have nonprofits right now. So we have 6 nonprofit organizations. And, to be honest with you, in Addison County, there aren't that many for-profit childcare centers. So I'm not even sure we could recruit one if we wanted to. And there was one more question. What is that? We have 6 programs, yep, right now.
And hi, Jamie. I'm Jackie, and don't repeat this if you've already said it since I arrived late. What are some of the services? Is it things like payroll, HR, accounts payable, receivable, enrollment?
Yeah, so we, so some of the services now, so most of the centers, all but one, have ProCare. It's a child care management software. They get support getting that set up and then kind of ongoing with questions and support as needed. There's a shared waitlist, which is new this year. So any new family looking to enroll in the county gets directed towards this form that gets filled out, and then they go on everybody's wait list. They can choose which ones they would like. That's really helped enrollment this year, it sounds like. We are kind of just launching the shared substitute pool. We had trouble hiring, just there weren't people around in this area, but now we have some and we're getting going with it, so it's very exciting. Everyone's really excited about that. And then the newest piece is we're looking at a shared administrator, so somebody to do all the paperworky stuff. And then the other things, the kind of business things, we have payroll, so Paydata does payroll, and then an employee assistance program, HR through CSAC. If they need supports there, they can talk to them. Have them all written down. And then, we've kind of just explored stuff as they want. And so if there's a topic that's pressing, we'll go and look for it.
Thank you.
One of the things that strikes me is the time management pieces that get saved for folks, like, like the time, how much, as a former program director, I just think about how much time one spends on each of those pieces, and how if there's a coordinator who is finding, either doing the work or finding the service to do the work, like, one just has to weigh, like, what's it worth to me? I bet I'm saving more than $500 a year. But that's a choice that programs make.
Yeah, I mean, that's been some of the feedback when we discuss a topic. For example, the retirement fund, when we had the broker come, they were so astonished by what they didn't know, and that if they had researched all of it themselves, they wouldn't have found not only all of the information, they just wouldn't have taken that much time, right? So they wouldn't have been able to explore thoroughly all of the stuff they wanted to explore. And so I think that's been one of the biggest savers for them, is really the time to look into what they're wondering about.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to point out that it's not even necessarily, especially right now, a question of like having the actual hours, but having like the mental and emotional bandwidth to do research into things that you have no idea. There's different jargon, there's industry standards you're not aware of, right? Like, that's a lot. So what's the sustainability plan?
So for now, we're looking at recruitment. I think that's the next step, really, is expanding our membership pool. So we're in the talks about discussing the budget for the coming years after the grant runs out, and deciding, how much they could afford, and how much of my time would that get them, and then how many more members would we really need. Excuse me. So although it's not laid out in stone, I do believe, if we can recruit new members and we can really show the value added for those things we've done, there should be no problem with every member being able to afford the time it takes me to do all of the research.
What's the, do you have any notion of how you would saturate Addison County with your presence in that way? Like, what's the capacity for?
So the interesting piece here is Addison County doesn't have a never-ending pool of providers. Chittenden County has 20-something in their network already, but they can go. So we've been making a slow kind of inroads with the network here. I also help coordinate items for another grant we're fiscal agent for, and that supports the directors network and then the home provider network. And so over the last couple of years, it's been kind of building trust within them so that they know me, I'm familiar, they understand who I am and how I can support them. And then, you know, the next step is seeing which one of them, you know, want to join and be a member. And so I think we have to go about it a little more carefully than Chittenden County because there just isn't that many. And, you know, Addison County has strong personalities, strong voices. And so I think the success has been through demonstrating we're trustworthy and that, you know, you can count on us for these items and look how we can support you. And so although we don't have a number more to recruit, you know, we could at least double our membership easily.
Have members, I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions about how you're forming your network, because that's a big part of it, right? It's like, okay, we showed up, we have this, you know, magic money, and then everybody's like, oh, this is great. And then we have to figure out together how to make this a continuous thing. And people making decisions together gets complicated. And so, especially when there's a feeling of scarcity. So how, like, are the current members, like, I'm just thinking of like how much directors depend on one another in terms of being in a network. So, you know, are your 6 members going, what 3 other directors can I talk to and describe how my experience has been enhanced by being part of this network, right? That's super powerful.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that is, that's the driver of our recruitment plan. So that's exactly it. The word of mouth goes a long way here, especially. And so they're all, you know, we have the list of ones to really focus on to start with. And they're all kind of finding ways in which to, you know, slide in a little, well, hey, if you joined, you'd get this benefit and it would help with your problem here. And so I think, you know, we're on that path. It's just making the plan and initiating the next steps.
One of the things that strikes me, so I was tapped to help an Orange County, the development of an Orange County neighbors mowing lawns, parallel universe, early childhood business collaborative. And one of the things that I realized very quickly was there's not one size fits all. Like, there are 20 some members in Chittenden County. There are 6 in Addison County. We don't know yet how many there will be in Orange County, but it really is about relationships and trust. And I love, Jamie, that you said, you know, the members are the drivers, because it's their collaborative. It's like truly for them, about them, and it's empowering them to be better at the things that to have more time for the things that they want to be doing, like being in their program, being with the kids. And so, you know, I feel like one of the things that I've seen, it's not actually that I've seen because I've only ever met Jamie virtually, but that I've heard through the grapevine that Jamie does exceptionally well is she doesn't say, I think we should do this and here's how we're going to go about it. She says, what do you need? Let me go research the resources. And she comes back and says, here are the options. And then the members, you know, decide, yes, we want to move forward and we're going to choose this or this or this and this. And so it becomes such a truly collaboration. So I think you're aptly named. Anyway, I obviously am a fan, which is why I invited Jamie here today. And if you have any other questions, I know we said we'd honor her time at about a half hour. So if you have any other questions, you know, you're certainly welcome to ask her here and now, as long as she has to spend with us. But I'm also happy to be the purveyor of those questions and to get back to you in this forum with her answers. Thanks so much, Jamie. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
All right, that was excellent. We appreciate that. Obviously, we're trying to figure our way through our journey here and solving the many issues in childcare, and that's definitely how I have copious notes here that to go through. And I suspect we'll probably have follow-on questions for you. We can brought those through Brenda in the future. So excellent. So I have a couple of updates, but I want to hear if anybody else has any updates first that they want to talk about before I go into some of the two updates I'll have about the tax exemption for childcare centers. I got a couple of questions for Brenda on that. And then also the public-private partnership, I have some updates on that. But anything that you folks have before we get into that? I don't see anything.
Just a real quick update. Shaun, hopefully you saw the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services came out with its proposal and plan of how it's going to spend its discretionary dollars, and the pie chart of the 29 or 28 million, how it's divided up. Have everyone seen that here? Okay, we'll I'll forward that to you, Andra, and you'll forward it to everyone. Great.
That's just so I'm clear, those are the committed dollars to DHHS, right?
Correct. Those are ARPA, DHHS, childcare dollars, right? And so they are going to be spending about $28 million over the next 2-ish years, year and a half, as you know, ARPA, and they have different buckets.
Yeah.
And some of what we're talking about here are logical within that too. And they're thinking an RFP process would be in place in about 6 months-ish. Okay. The money would go out. So I'll send that to Andra.
All right. Then anybody else before I jump into a couple of these? All right. So we met with the advocacy committee in regards to our proposed legislation for the property tax exemption for childcare facilities. Got quite a few questions, but they want to take a look at. In fact, I got a meeting with New Futures in a couple of weeks, and also I just got an email from Rebecca Witowski in reference to meeting with Senator Whitley on this issue that just came through. So that's a good start, but I don't want to do anything until I hear back from advocacy to make sure they're all set with this. Again, there's a few more questions. Folks are having things to be reviewed, and we have time. We don't need to submit the bill until November, so we have time to build allies and formalize our strategy and build that coalition around this. So that's my latest update. And Brenda, I had a question for you. I don't have any contacts in Vermont to see how much value this is for them, and who would be the champion if it is of value to pursue that in Vermont. Any thoughts on that?
You mean the property tax exemption for early childhood programs? So that was actually a part of the LGK, and all parties joined. So BBF, like literally every alliance, everyone asked for that, Vermont AUIC this year, and it didn't happen. So it had really good momentum, and then it was like, okay, we have like other things to deal with, so come back with that. So it will come up again, but it's already sort of a well-crafted ask in Vermont, and it has gotten a fair bit of attention. In the end, it didn't have the traction it needed to move forward.
Was there an actual bill though, or is it just a concept?
It was a proposal that didn't make it past proposal stage.
Okay, so they don't have anything written that we could take a look at to try to.
Well, there is something in writing, and as I hold on, like, okay, so I probably won't be able to. I'm going to see if I can quick find it in my in-house database, and if I can't, I want to be present for this meeting. So, but if I can find a link to something, I'll share it here today, and if not, I'll send something to you later.
Yeah, I don't need anything right now. I mean, the model we used was Ohio and Colorado, bits and pieces of there. So if somebody else has already done this, no sense reinventing the wheel. And not only that, it would be good to reference those. So if you do have anything at some point, if you could get it to us, that would be great. Any other thoughts on that property tax exemption issue before I move on to the private partnership, public-private partnership? All right, I will keep you updated as I get new information, and obviously advocacy is the main entity for that, even though I expect to be heavily involved in that work as we move it forward. Okay, public-private partnership. I met with Dartmouth Health on it was last week. I forget what day it was, and I spoke to Susan DeGrosky, I believe is the pronunciation of her last name. She's in charge of HR for DH. And also Courtney Tanner, who's the government affairs rep. and I explained to them the concept we were looking for. They had a lot of questions. Obviously, they're not in a position to commit to anything. And what I asked them for was, we really need some space to be able to do this, and ideally about 2 acres of space. I sent them a copy of the design plan for the facility that the Boys and Girls Club in Concord is trying to build for 94 kids. It's about 9,000 square feet. It's about an acre in size. We need double that because we're looking at 186 children is what we're trying to provide a facility for. They have an architect who's designing that, and they're looking, Jackie, to pursue those funds. But I'm not sure it's the DHHS funds. It's for the unallotted funds that Tyler Caswell is holding on to.
Yeah, it might be, although I don't think Taylor Caswell is really looking at expansion as much as like mortgage relief and other things. I think the discretionary dollars is more around expansion, but frankly, I think it's more around family childcare expansion. But if I read it correctly, yeah.
Well, Courtney also talked about that too, that there's quite a bit of, there's a very large sum of money the state has and hasn't used. It's not committed to anything. And as we know, to get someone to change their mind and commit to something, it just takes a little convincing. So anyway, so I had a discussion with them. They're going back to talk to their folks. They wanted to know what, they didn't say it this way, but really what's in it for them, right? I said, if we were to build some sort of facility, obviously a certain number of those childcare seats would be dedicated to their employees if they provided the land at no charge. Their other interest is they're doubling the size of their childcare facility at the Dartmouth location, but it still won't be big enough. And it doesn't meet the demands for after hours childcare. And that's something that we could certainly explore. And that's a whole different challenge, of course, getting people to work evening shifts and that sort of thing. But they have a lot of their nurses, of course, they work 24/7. They got people on and weekends and everything else. So they like the concept. And I kind of emphasized, although we would take what we can get, but I had that discussion with Peter Glenshaw about 6 months ago about Alice Peck Day. The value of that, it's on our bus route, and it's also within our sidewalk network. So there's a lot of value there, and it's part of the downtown area. If we use that city-owned piece of land that I was talking about, it's up in the industrial park, not on the sidewalk network, not within the transit system area. So anyway, they're going to get back to me. I'm waiting for them on that. For that space for 186, we're looking at about 2 acres of land because I want some space for playground space for kids to be able to go outside and enjoy life outside a little bit. So that's tracking along. Last time we talked about this, so there were some different thoughts about this. I want to kind of hear where you think our next steps are. I've got in my mind what the next steps are, but I want to know what you think what the next steps are to move forward with this. I look at a timeline of, especially if I'm going to go for some congressional funding, April 15th or around about that date next year is when we'd have to have a package together, a concept together to be able to ask for those funds. If we're looking for state funds through that ARPA pool, it's unclear when those timelines are, that they haven't necessarily been published yet. I know that in Concord, they're looking to apply for these funds, and I suspect they're going to get them for that 9,000 square foot facility to provide childcare there. And that's on a sliding scale. That's to deal with the equity issue, which nothing else that I have, as we talked about, is going to be able to address that issue like this might do that. Anyway, yeah. Jackie.
Yeah, I've got two quick things. First, in terms of the congressionally directed spending next April, by the time you actually would hear from the Congress, and the Congress is, Shaheen, it was Shaheen's office, I think, was it? Or was it Hassan's office? No, it was Custer's office, right?
Custer and Shaheen, yeah.
Okay, right. They'll put it forward, but whether the help the committee does it is a real crapshoot, and that's way into like November. So that's a year into 2023 November. So I think there should be a plan for earlier funding, and I do think the state funding is likely to come out in I would guess fall-ish, the RFP ish, right, this fall. So I would think we would want to, if we really want this to happen, I think we'd want, a variety of funding stream options. And then the second thing I would say is last time we talked, I think, or the time before, we talked about this idea of convening and welcoming the childcare community in the Upper Valley, so they felt part of the dreaming of this and the thinking of this, so that it didn't come off to them as Shaun's already got to deal with the Boys and Girls Club of Central New Hampshire, because that would feel like that's what it sounds like right now. And I don't think it should, because it has to be right. So just FYI, again, as a reminder.
So how do you,
Yeah, what are the steps for, like, I think that's part of what we want to know is like, what are the next proposed steps for that? Because I'm happy to do the coordination part of that.
Yeah.
But I would need to know from this group, like, who should we invite? How should we
Yeah.
have it? How long should we set aside? Like that kind of stuff. And I'm happy to be the facilitator for that, even
Right.
if going to be helpful as like a kind of a neutral third party.
Yeah.
So who should we
I would
invite?
love Jenn and Amy to weigh in as
Yeah.
well. Right.
And when should we hold it? Should it be an evening, I'm assuming?
Jenn, Amy, any thoughts?
Yeah, evening might work. I'm thinking actually later evening, like 7:30. Especially this time of the year. So if there's a ball game or something, I might be home.
And maybe it could be recorded for those who couldn't attend, so at least they see the welcoming part on their own time and understand the process.
I've actually been doing, that's an idea. I've actually been doing very short videos for them to watch during the day, and then they respond, so that if I do have a short meeting in person, they're kind of prepped for it. But I have the introductory video would be like maybe 10-12 minutes, so they could watch it at nap time, jot down any questions or ideas or whatever, and then when we meet, they have that kind of generated.
Jenn, any thoughts? I know you're doing double duty right now in your facility. I got your email.
Sorry, yes, busy day. I just think it would be important to get the message out on what we're trying to accomplish and invite feedback, as Jackie has suggested, just so that, they have a say, they have an understanding, and possibly some great ideas on how to go about it too, that we don't have an agreement with somebody in particular. And maybe there's people out there that would be interested in the project itself. I don't know how that would work being on Dartmouth land, if they would have any controlling factor on who comes in. So I think that's something to think about as well.
Yeah, like I say, I don't even know if we're going to get any land from them. I know they don't have any existing office space available that could be used, that could be retrofitted. They've been filling whatever they have. It would have to be some virgin piece of property that would have to be developed. And I know they have larger plans to keep adding on to their facility. And there's not a whole lot of space over at Alice Peck Day either, but there is some space there.
And who is the operator? Who is the planned operator of this program?
Well, there isn't a planned operator, right? So the exact structure of how it would work. So let's say that Alice Peck Day, which is Dartmouth Health, says, okay, you can use a piece of our land to develop this, whether that's $1 a year lease, or the structure is unclear, right? Or if it's going to be a city-owned piece of property, or if they're going to, it could be any of those combinations to make it work for some lengthy period of time, because we don't want something short. This is going to last a long time.
Right,
then-
what's the long-term sustainability program or plan? I was thinking, and I see Julie just put my second question, thought, consideration into chat, and that is, so if I were the director of a program in the Upper Valley, I would say, hey, we're already in a staffing crunch, and you're talking about what what did you say, 9,400 square feet, or was it this one double that, that you're, that's gonna take a
18,000.
lot of staff, and please don't take mine. My hard-earned staff.
Part of the plan, which we haven't brought back up again, is that this would be a lab school,
Right.
so that there would
wait.
be.
Okay, were you gonna say more about lab school? Because, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, because we want these folks to be paid a livable wage, and we don't want it to be put out there as we're poaching staff, paying them a higher wage. And we know that there is this issue going on in the community. And so the idea would be that this, whoever operates this childcare, the ECE initiative would support making this into a lab school, so that it fed out into the broader community of like having staff that are like trained and qualified to be able to staff up all
So
centers.
generally lab schools are associated with institutions of higher education. Is there a relationship with an institution of higher education? Like
No.
there's a lab school down at Colby Sawyer, but lab school has like an actual definition, and I'm just curious, like where the expertise what is the source of the expertise?
TBD. We don't know yet.
Gotcha.
And it may not be, we may not, I think we should look at all options, including the community college system, but I think that's to be announced. Yeah. We're trying
Yeah,
to
no, that's cool. That's cool. I'm just like all the things. So I went, my undergrad was at a university that specializes in education, and we had a lab school, and every lab school that I've ever so I'm just trying to think about like what it would look like and who could the partners be. And I know that Dartmouth is very, very explicitly disinterested in being that partner. So, and there's sort of the obvious one in the backyard, but I love that, CCV or community college of other community colleges, including ones on the New Hampshire side, would be considered.
So we weren't talking to Dartmouth College, Dartmouth Health. Obviously, there's a difference.
No, I understand that actually. I just meant when we think of institutions of higher education, sometimes we think of the most sort of obvious ones in town. And Dartmouth has made it very clear over the years that is not them in this case.
And Brenda, I think it was just a good idea of something to pursue as opposed to a decision, right?
Cool.
It came up in the last,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the last one, and I have not caught up on listening to all the recording.
And I think the one other point I wanted to make is that the terrible irony is that a lab school requires subsidy, and the community college system has been disinvesting and closing lab schools. So we just need to be aware of that if we're thinking the community college system is the solution. It's
and
not.
it may be more like a training program rather than a lab school.
Mm-hmm.
That goes, but I just think that the way Andrew put it, meaning it feeds into the betterment of the whole systemic problem, instead of creating a worse problem by pulling all the staff away and closing programs, it would actually be seen as the solution
Mm-hmm.
to the problem.
I just think we have to figure out how that's going to be presented to be, received in the community. And it'd be interesting to hear what other program directors, have to say about that too. I think I understand where you're going with it. I have the same fears. We're already in a staffing crunch. And I don't know, having somebody come in, I'm just going to say Boys and Girls Club, for example, paying the rates that they're paying, it just, whether it's a lab school of some sort or not, it just is going to, I don't know. It's going to be like that big box store coming in and taking away from the smaller businesses kind of feel. So I just want to make sure that we're presenting it in a way and getting feedback from the community so that it's going to be well received and welcomed versus feeling like it's more competition and putting others out.
Thank you, Jen. That's really, really important. I think the way to word it is to say, we know that you are having trouble hiring qualified staff, or not hiring them, finding them. You're having trouble because they don't exist right now. They're not coming to your door, banging it down, wanting to work in your classrooms. And we know that training people on the job is taxing. So what we want to do, like you don't have, it's like a shared service. You don't have the time or the capacity to do that right now, right? And so like Amy has talked about the fact that people are floating on certifications and you can only do that so much, right? And so this would be, I think, like making it clear that we're offering this to take the load off of you in the long term is what this is about. It's not about outpricing you or anything like that. And also making it clear that this initiative is looking at all sides of the problem. So while this thing might be happening in this particular area, we are also advocating for raises in wages and like all of the other things that would help everyone have a higher quality of life and access to affordable, high quality childcare. So I think like putting it into context is the most important piece, and like leading with how it's going to benefit folks in the long term, because those fears, they're going to come up, they're going to happen. And we need to say, yes, that's an understandable fear. And also, like, if we don't do this, like, there are going to be consequences for everybody. So
I wonder about, like, so if I were one of the people showing up as a program director or even working in a program, one of the things that I might propose, and I'm just sort of thinking out loud here with y'all. One of the things that I might propose is, hey, instead of building this massive new place, could we maybe invest in my program? Because then I could extend my hours, or I could, expand my capacity. And so I'm hopeful that this committee would consider those sorts of options as well, because it does start to sound like, I guess, like, have we done, so we know there's need. And I think there's a needs assessment. There has been needs assessment done on the Vermont side. And I think there's a needs assessment process in motion on the New Hampshire side. And then there's one that's sort of like Upper Valley blend. But, like, in order to really set somebody up for success, like long-term sustainability of a program that is of the size that I just heard described, we need to know that it's a wise use of the resources, and that it's not going to be like full for 5 years and then 3/4 empty or even a quarter empty, because that does not set a business up for sustainability. So, some new infrastructure necessary, most likely, probably a resounding yes. And how can we support who's already there, like the Jenn Parkers of the world, who are doing really great work, and say, hey, I could use some of those resources to expand the hours that I offer. And it's going to require me hiring some more staff. Please help. I'm not speaking for you, Jenn. I'm just sort of thinking, and with my former director hat on.
Jesse?
Yeah, so I was wondering if maybe, it seems like this concept, like I'm wondering if there's something that we can compile like in written form. Shaun, I don't know if there was anything that you shared with the folks at DH before you met with them, but just so that we sort of are all kind of like, we understand sort of what the parameters of this idea are. I think it was on the last meeting that I first heard from Amy bring up sort of like, if we're going to be going forward with this, let's also think about the lab school, because that actually helps address one of the other needs, which is training new staff, finding new staff, workforce pipeline. So I guess, if there's this idea and it's become a blend of sort of several ideas, is there a way we can kind of capture that so we all sort of understand what it, where this idea, like what kind of, what this idea is trying to address, and, at least right now, what we think it could look like. And then maybe include as part of that concept, like different stakeholders that need to be consulted, like, talking to the other existing providers to get their feedback and see what they think of this idea as sort of like a first step. Just because I think, I heard about this at the last meeting, but I haven't heard about sort of like how this sort of came into development. So just would be helpful to kind of like have it all contained in one place so we can all sort of talk about it from the same point.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I normally have project worksheets on everything. However, this really is a conversation that continues to evolve. It's not anything that's hard and fast. We're not even at that stage yet. To even develop a concept, it's going to take a year, just the way I see it, just to develop the whole concept and get it down into a project package that can be proposed to other people. And it's not quite there yet. It's more of a vision. And I look at it from a more basic perspective. What can provide enough childcare, call them seats or positions that we don't presently have now? Before we had COVID-19, we didn't have enough seats. We have even less now. The sector is not meeting demand. And more importantly, DH is going to double the size of their facility and they will take care of their employees and they can afford to do so. But the people working at the lower level can't do that. And I don't see any other plan in place to address that issue, certainly not in the Upper Valley. And no providers that are able to provide a sliding scale and be able to do that, or no cost at all, depending upon what your income is. I don't see anything that fits that requirement. And from the city's perspective, that has to be one of my primary objectives, is dealing with that equity issue and dealing with the lower income ranges who simply can't afford it. We're completely out of this market. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish. Now, what is the best way to do that? The private sector / nonprofit sector alone doesn't seem to be able to do that. It requires some other inputs. So if that is a partnership with private entities, so they can get some of what they want and I can get a lot of what I want in terms of dealing with that equity issue, and what that ultimate form is and what that actually looks like, I don't know. I don't have a model I can look at that somebody else has that meets all those requirements, and at the same time have that opportunity to teach new people how to start in this profession, learn how to do this work. As Amy had talked about, that piece of it added on to that. And even a new dimension now of after hours care, after traditional hours care, to meet some of those other needs of other businesses in the area. What does that look like? Is it even possible? I mean, how difficult is it to do that? I don't know of anybody who has one of those in our state. Hopefully there is somewhere. But again, remember, this is not my area of expertise at all. I'm just trying to convene the right people and trying to use the resources and the influence wherever I have to make it happen. And we're just at the beginning phase of that. So I'm not even sure there's a whole lot to even write down right now to get to that point.
Well, I could put together in preparation for having, I mean, it sounds like to me, first of all, like what we're talking about is we need to have a community conversation about this particular set of needs, which is accessible, affordable care, wherever it happens, whoever runs it, after hours, possibility for after hours care, and the ability to train folks in workforce development in some fashion, right? Those are the three things we're looking to, like, we could put together some single project solution, right? Whether that's through a single funding source or a couple, but that's what we're looking to do. So could that be distributed across a whole bunch of different providers and build capacity in? We'd have to be clear about what it takes to be an on-the-job training site. Like, that's its whole own level of work. And I think what we're looking at is we also, like, in order to solve all those problems or check all those boxes or whatever, we have a space right now, we have potential funding right now, we have potential, a potential service provider partner, but we want to bring it to the community and get feedback before we make any decisions, because we want to do that together. So I think we have enough to convene people and get their feedback and have a conversation about it, and then make a decision about what to do next.
I agree. I think you have enough just to bring people in to get feedback. Absolutely.
I was just going to say, I heard you say, Shaun, that the private sector can't meet the need, and I agree. And that's why in Vermont we've been, like, for a decade now saying, and I remember on the very first time I joined this group, I said it's a marathon, and you're like, no, it's a sprint, and I'm like, it's both. And I think we agreed at the end of that meeting that it's both. So, like, what can we do now that offers relief in every part of, everything we've just talked about today, but also like we absolutely need public investment. So we have to keep crafting those bills. And we have to keep gathering the support for them. We have to keep showing up to our legislature and saying, hey, people, this is a public good. You have to invest. And guess what? Our state economies depend on it. It's not just fluff for the teachers and nicety nice for the families and the kids, but our freaking state economies and our quality of life depends on it. So like, I know that I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, but it's like, it's time. And don't ever let anybody tell you there's not enough money. Oh, we find money for the things that we value. So let's stop being all scarcity schmarcity over here for early childhood education and just say, we are worth it and it's time.
I don't disagree with you. Obviously, that's why I'm here, but unfortunately, there are others who don't necessarily feel that way. And we have to get them on. We have to
educate. Data,
Right.
data.
And right
That's why we
now,
have to be smart. We absolutely have to know what we're talking about. And we can't just keep, like, I honestly think, we have to go to the root cause. Why is it that a program is having financial challenges? Why is it that, it's hard, this part is hard or that part is hard? And look at the systemic issues. That's why it's like, those are policy fixes we have to talk about. How do we train the people? Oh, we're gonna have to invest in professional development and not just the infrastructure.
so right now there's money and there's a that's always usually the problem. And that isn't the problem right now. There is a pot of money and I suspect it's only going to be here for a short period of time. And when it goes away, I think things are going to be back to the way they always are. So we've got to be wise and grab what we can now in this process to be able to move our objectives forward. And then generally what happens when people get used to a certain level of service, they don't want to reduce it.
Well, and I would, yes, and so yes, what you just said, and we have to codify it while it's hot in people's memories, get it into law, because then it's even harder to roll back. If we could fund it for 2, 3, 5 years and show that there's sustainability when people are well funded, then people are going to start to see how there's, I hate to use the term return on investment, but people will start to see the return on the investment.
So when Shaun and I spoke with the advocacy group, not to blend them, but these things are obviously related. One of the things we talked a lot about is that until people see themselves as part of the story, whether that's the problem or the solution, all the data in the world is not going to make them care. Look at climate change. So, a lot of it is like sort of ideological challenging. In some cases. One of the things I'm curious about now as we're talking is who, and this will help me in putting together some kind of like basic statement that this group can then look over to say, is this how we want to invite people? Is this the message we want to be putting out? Who else besides childcare providers should we invite to this? Like, who are the other allies, whether they're DHHS or somewhere else, that should be part of this initial, feedback conversation? Because that's a really important piece. Business leaders.
Right, but
Absolutely got to get
who
the
are
business
who are
leaders
those
in
people
there.
though? Like I need names.
Okay, so I don't know the names on there's a long, okay, go to the endorsement page for the childcare program or the childcare campaign in Vermont. There are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of big name businesses who are endorsers and financial supporters because they get it. They so get it. And that has been cultivated over 20 years. Like literally it's been like, hey, what are some of your challenges? Oh, your people can't come to work because their childcare isn't reliable or they can't find childcare in the area. And so there have been people who like conservative, like politically conservative, fiscally conservative, you name it, people who were not in the camp. Mark Foley will stand on a public podium and tell you, I am conservative and I am an ardent supporter of the childcare campaign in Vermont because my staff need childcare so they can come to work and do the work that I've hired them to do. And so he now like stands on the Capitol steps and talks about the value of investing in early childhood education. So I don't think we even have to get choosy, just be like, hey, and engage. And I don't know the people on the New Hampshire side.
So
Yeah.
certainly, obviously, if we get a date, which we can do that, we can invite folks from the corporate council and see if we can get them to attend. Unfortunately, we didn't get much of a turnout for the subcommittees. I was hoping for some better input, because it would have been helpful, especially on the consumer cooperative, and we got 0, which is unfortunate. But I think once we have a product we can actually demonstrate to people, I think we'll get some interest at that point. That's how business folks generally think, and they want, give me something I can look at and it makes sense to me that I can fit into the program, and what's it going to cost me, so on and so forth. We don't quite have that yet. We're getting there. So, all right, so we're going to try to find a date, and then we'll I'll get it out to UVBA, Upper Valley Business Alliance. We'll also send it to Hartford Chamber of Commerce, and the Corporate Council, which is both sides of the river, and see what we can get for input on that. Other thoughts? Other questions?
I just want to note that Julie had a good point that we need to invite families with low incomes who specifically need accessible, affordable care to be part of this conversation. So,
Is there anyone in the Upper Valley / Vermont area that are really good at that? That's a tricky thing. It's very important, but hard to do right.
The family place is really good at engaging folks from across socioeconomic strata.
Great.
I know on the Vermont side that BBF might be a good partner for that. I know they've had some success engaging families on the regular in some of their decision making. So
yeah, we've also found, the childcare providers themselves, with the relationships they have with their families, are so trusting that they can perhaps encourage folks to be part of a focus group, or encourage folks to participate or take a survey, whatever's done. They can be really instrumental in encouraging folks. We actually a while back had it was through New Futures and Moms Rising and others that were going to childcare programs and actually being there. And it was the director who said, "Hey, I just want to introduce you to so and so. He's here, and they were and I'm looking to have a conversation. Do you have time?" And it really was amazing how many people they got by actually going to the childcare programs and talking as during pickup times.
well, and honestly, because this initiative has resources, like that would be a compensated piece of work for families that engaged in that. So we get a stipend.
Unfortunately, a lot of the people who we're looking at aren't going to be at a child care facility because they can't afford to be there. And then we're going to miss that whole group. That's what I'm concerned about, because when we're talking about is the folks at the lower range, and there aren't too many places that provide that kind of care. Certainly around here, there aren't.
Yeah.
But the childcare providers have wait lists.
They have, right. But they also may be serving, Shaun, unless Upper Valley is different than the rest of the state. Childcare providers also do serve some low-income families.
Absolutely, and many are
Yeah.
supported by the Child Care Financial Assistance Program in Vermont.
I was going to suggest we could reach out to like unemployment offices too, because if they're trying to help people find work and childcare is an obstacle, that could be a resource. Or also the subsidy programs themselves in each state, they might have families that they could reach out to if we shared information on the initiative as well.
And the family
Another way
resource-
that folks can, like especially legislators and business leaders, can engage with the early childhood community is to have sort of meet and greets. I know there were again on the Vermont side, the early childhood networks had some, they basically set up Springfield. I'll give a Springfield example. Set up some play stations in a large room in a community center, and they invited all their legislators to come and play for an hour. And then they stationed themselves, and they every single one of them had some points of education. They asked some questions. They just engaged and said, "Hey, look, we're real people, and this is the value of what you're doing right here. This is what I do every day." And they talked about the learning that was taking place, and then the need for those legislators' support. They could tell you in more detail how they did it, but it was very impactful.
All right. Any other thoughts? All right. So our task right now to find a date and then be able to get as many people from different perspectives as we can to be part of the group.
I'm
question
sorry,
is-
can I
Yeah.
apologize, Shaun. It seems like those are two different meetings. I think if we want to have the childcare providers to feel welcomed and brainstorm how they individually could help, it seems like that should be its own meeting. Right? Or am I missing something? Right?
I assume that we were going to do that first,
Okay.
so that we
Okay.
understand more about this before we move on to informing the work. I don't know.
Okay.
I think providers should be part of the first iteration, and then that iteration presented to that group, those groups of people.
After we get all the feedback.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
They have the most, they're going to be, like it or not, they will be impacted the most by it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would be nice not to have to go back to those groups with a different version because the providers couldn't get their input in first. So.
Honestly, I was curious about when I asked about business folks, I really was thinking of more like who are some, not just the business community like altogether, but more like who are some specific people that we might target to come to the initial meeting with childcare providers. Because I was thinking that if we're having a conversation that's like, we want to solve this problem with these 4 aspects to it, having folks who are not directly experiencing the problem, but could actually just like throw some solutions at it from their pockets, rather than having 2 separate meetings where the people experiencing the problem are talking about what kind of feedback, like deciding together, and then having a separate meeting that's like, okay, now we're going to come up with some solutions. I was wondering if having a more open meeting where we are being real targeted about who we're inviting that's outside of the childcare world, not because they'd say, I business owner A, I'm going to solve the problem and put my money into it, but just somebody who has their heart in this work and might have some interesting feedback on it. So what do you think about that idea? Because I was thinking not having necessarily 2 separate meetings. We need to obviously have other phases after an initial conversation, but having just a conversation where like everybody who's impacted, employers, childcare providers, families, and say, we, the community, as part of this initiative, are looking to solve this problem. What do you have to say about that? What ideas do you have? What concerns do you have? What, we're the ones who are tasking ourselves with doing the work to solve this problem. So how can we serve you best? And if you want to specifically be involved later, great, give us your number. But we're not asking for a commitment right now. We just want your feedback.
I would suggest under 2 meetings, only with the childcare providers in the community, because this is such a coalition and meant to be supportive of the field, in the area, that I think it would feel more welcoming to do that first, and then also invite them to the second meeting. But that would just be my feedback. Yeah.
Do you think this could be part of that follow-up Vital Communities work that we were discussing of doing? We presented the problem in November and here's a potential solution that would look nice to some of the people we lost on committees between then and now. Maybe they'll say, oh, wow, they're really moving. Maybe we should be involved. And then, yeah, I totally agree with Jackie. I was actually waiting for Jenn to see if Jenn had anything to say, but as a provider, I think, to be honest, I think they have the most, it would impact them the most. When you talk about the crisis we're in, they have the most to lose out of losing. I mean, it could close, potentially this project could close a center. So it's like that kind of a balance that we're in. And I think it needs to be that kind of thinking under that, because we do have capacity, Shaun, in the Upper Valley. We didn't have enough. We've never had enough. I don't know if we will ever have enough, but we do have empty slots due to a significant amount. I'll have a number and hopefully by the 1st of June, of how many slots are empty due to staffing.
Right.
So my thinking is like, let's get back to where we were. Let's get everybody full and operating, because the other thing that was just kind of like loose numbers, Kim Vada found that I think like it was 67% are not operating at that her break even where she likes them. So that's not good to have 67% of those centers not at break even yet due to staffing. So they could close just because of financial burden of not having the slots making money.
And what are we doing to solve that problem? Of course, is the open question. I don't expect an answer right now. But
So I feel like a lot of what we've done is like come up with a lot of good ideas. And I love that the climate has been created where that's safe and good and okay. And I guess my only personal like sort of caution, in my internal caution is that we truly vet whatever we say we want to do, because otherwise I just want to make sure that this good energy isn't lost by us just sort of throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, and that it's really informed so that it can be set everyone up for success. Like those programs that I agree with Amy, there are programs that would close their doors. And the other thing that we know as people who are in the biz is that not everyone chooses a large program. So even if we create the ideal perfect number of slots to meet the present need, which we haven't quite determined accurately in this moment, I feel like some of the numbers are moving, but even if we had just the right amount tomorrow in an amazing, beautiful, large center, there are people who wouldn't choose that because that's not the model of care where they want to enroll their child, and that's okay. You know, we pride ourselves in New England in offering a mixed delivery system where we have, you know, family childcare homes and small centers and quirky, you know, theme specific centers and large centers, etc.
unfortunately, if we're able to get 186 seats, that's not even going to scratch the surface of what the need is. I suspect at the end of the day, it's not going to make such a groundbreaking difference on society. What it will do is it'll provide a certain number of low income slots that are for people that with a sliding scale that we can guarantee. But other than that, it's not going to be earth shattering in terms of the Upper Valley and changing the childcare crisis. It'll provide a few more positions, but that's about it at the end of the day. It's not going to, I don't even know what the numbers are. I've seen numbers of 1,200 to 2,000 seats that are needed in the Upper Valley. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. So 186 is not even going to scratch that surface.
That's right. And I think, you know, having been in this field for so long and advocating for this field for so long, we got to use every tool in the toolbox that we have. It is both a sprint and a marathon. I agree with, you know, right, as you both said, and you got to just keep trying. You know, the big fix is probably going to have to be a federal fix, you know, to really game change everything. But that doesn't mean we should sit on our hands just because it's not fixing everything, right? So I think it's wonderful that Vital Communities is doing this.
I just want to speak to Brenda's concern that through my work with Goovist and the network analysis, we did an analysis of how we were working together, how we were collaborating. So we actually measured our level of collaboration. And one of the things I have learned from the evaluators is that it is actually harmful to over survey people and not do anything at all with the results. It's not just lazy or wasteful or neutral. It actually does harm. And it's sort of like testing for an infectious disease without actually having some sort of national solution for the pandemic. So you're constantly putting people through this process of revisiting things that are difficult for them and not feeling like that's going anywhere. So I just want to, like, as the temporary initiative project manager, just want to say that I very strongly feel that Unless we feel like we can do something about it, and I know we can because we have the resources, we have the people, then I wouldn't even be like, I would not be supporting asking the questions. And I think if we're very clear that, when we invite folks like, hey, if you can't come to this 7 p.m. meeting on whatever random Wednesday we decided is going to be, here are the alternate ways you can provide feedback. Of course, at a certain point, it's like, we can't take your feedback 2 months later because you didn't have time, and I'm really sorry. And we can make it as accessible as possible, be as welcoming as possible, and say, like, in order to solve this problem, this is one of the solutions that we feel needs to happen. And here's the 6 other things we're doing, we being the initiative, and you can connect at any point with any of these solutions that you're able to do. So you're not shut out, you're as much a part of it as possible. And this is a messy problem. And there's going to be some uneven or complicated solutions to it. So
I don't know if everyone's reading the chat, but I like what Julie said, like, let's offer some short-term supports while we're working on the long-term solutions.
All right, any other thoughts on any other issues or any further thoughts on this issue? Because we're coming close to the end of our time. So we got to find a date, at least for an initial meeting, it sounds like, although I like the idea of the combined meeting, but at least an initial date, it sounds like, for the providers to meet to further flesh out the concept. And to Jesse's point, it needs to get into writing. It needs to be one of those project worksheets that has some more meat to it. So at least the concept, the vision is spelled out adequately enough so other people can look at it and say, yes, this is something I'm interested in, or something I'm not interested in. And everybody's on the same sheet of music, because we all have different thoughts on this, that's how this process evolves to get to the point where we get something that gets done. Because I'm used to getting things done, getting projects completed. That's what I get paid to do every day. And that's what I will do with this. One way or the other, we'll get to that point. And I am optimistic we will be able to meet at least some of these needs. We will not meet all of them, but some of these needs. And that's why I'm here, because otherwise I would not be here. If I can't accomplish anything at the end of the day, I'm gonna, obviously, like the rest of you, busy days and things to do. And we're gonna make some progress on this one. All right then, so we'll get back to you on a potential date for that. We do need some further input as to who we should invite, though, if we can get that to Andra, about who the other players are that we would want to attend this. And Brenda, if you could just get back to me on that legislation on that. I'm dealing with only one side of the river, and I got employees that live on the other side of the river, and I got employers in the city that live on the other side of the river. So I could use some, who will be the champion over there? If it's a value, how do we flesh that out? I realize property taxes aren't as big as they are in New Hampshire and Vermont, which is good. You have a more diversified system.
Yes, I can tell you 2 things. The biggest champion in Vermont is the governor, and it's the legislature who is less interested. And interestingly enough, and probably because it is, a less of a tax burden, property taxes are less of a burden in Vermont than they are in New Hampshire, programs weren't as jazzed up about it as we thought they would be.
Okay. I wonder why. See, that's one of the things I have to deal with on this one too, is that the form can be rather complicated. So people have to be walked through it, and you actually need to go out and solicit them and say, hey, listen, you want to apply for this? And I can walk you through how to do it, which is something we don't normally do. So that has to be part and parcel to this, and try to make the form less complicated. So far, the vision of what that looks like is not. Anyway, that's another problem I got to deal with on this. So, and that's why
Go ahead, Shaun, sorry.
Well, that's why I've got this intern. She's going to help me do that. I'm going to figure out the cost impact on the city of Lebanon alone. She's going to research all the licensed providers and find out where their properties are. We'll get an idea what the assessed value is, and what, if they all applied, what would that impact be, financial impact on the city. And then, of course, trying to figure out those that are not licensed providing in-home care, if they decided to get licensed. Now, trying to find that number of people will be very difficult to do, I suspect, because there's no data that I know of on those folks. Andrew, sorry to interrupt you there.
No, I just wanted to ask, so I will write something up. I will draft something that is a beginning idea of how we want to message this to childcare providers, what the timing is going to be, like sort of put together a project plan for this idea. Would 2 people be willing to look at the draft and make adjustments to whatever I put in there? So like, it's particularly looking at that first meeting of like going out to childcare providers. So Jesse and Amy, thank you.
I'll need to take a look at it too, Andrew, obviously, but okay, sounds good. We've made some progress, I think, today. I'm looking forward to an input into a sector that I am not as familiar with, obviously. Thank you for your time, and we will meet with you the next time. Have a good day.